I'm Reisigo, and I'm attempting to complete every single GameCube game, but I'm randomizing what game I'm playing next. In this episode, we're assembling our army of mini robots to take down the Galactic Emperor in Gacha Force. So let's see how Gacha Force is in 2024. Gacha Force was released on December 5th, 2003, and was developed and published by Capcom. If you don't know, Gacha Force is a fighting third-person shooter game where we collect gacha toys and battle with them. We're going to go through the story mode and beat the final boss to consider this one complete for the challenge. When we open up the game, we get a very nice anime opening cutscene. In this cutscene, it shows us how a meteorite had crashed into Earth, and our main character ends up running there after school to see what it is. When we get there, he meets his first Gacha Borg known as G-Red. Then we get some short clips of different characters that we'll meet during our playthrough of this game. It shows some battling from the Borgs and just sort of sums up the game's story in this cutscene without any dialogue. This all plays over a very funky, jazzy theme, and that was also very good. When watching this cutscene, I assumed that Gacha Force was an actual cartoon or anime in Japan, but I found out later that this is just a game, and it was completely designed by Capcom. This game gives every vibe of being based on an anime in the cutscenes of the game. Once the cutscene is over, we get a voice-acted explanation for everything that had happened up until this point in the game. The voice acting in this game isn't good at all. The voiceover during this section reminds me of when somebody talks when they're wearing headphones or something, and they can't really tell how loud they're speaking. It's like the kid is yelling at us the whole time, and it's very tough to listen to.
A boy went in search of it, hoping to find an adventure. What he found was a palm-sized robot that has a mind of its own.
We get our first dialogue from the main character, Ko, and G-Red. G-Red tells him that he's on Earth to track down and stop the evil army known as the Death Force. This will be the main objective for this game. G-Red then asks Ko to become a Gacha Force commander and help save the Earth and defeat the Death Force. He agrees to this, and we're thrown into our first battle of the game. In this game, we have a Gacha Force energy. This determines how many Borgs we can take into each battle. Each Borg has a set amount of power that they need in order to be used, so we have to build a team around our available energy that increases as we work our way through the game. But for now, we only have one Borg, and that's G-Red himself. So we have to fight a bunch of evil Borgs with G-Red for our first battle of the game. This ends up being easy because the evil Borgs are weak at this point, and it's teaching us how to play the game. Let's move into the gameplay of Gacha Force. When we enter a battle, we can control our current Borg freely. This will allow for us to jump and run around the arena that we're in. Each fight takes place in a squared shape arena, and we can interact with anything in the stage, but you cannot fall out of the map. When attacking, we have two options, and this will depend on the type of Borg that we're using. We can keep our distance and use ranged attacks, like shooting bullets or lasers at the enemies. Obviously, this means that we can miss more often, but with the assistant aim, this doesn't happen too much. But it can happen when we use stronger attacks that move more slowly. Our other option is to get close and personal with the enemies and melee attack them. This means that we can use a sword, throw punches and kicks, or whatever other weapon we might have with our Borg. So this adds a bit of a strategy when doing each mission. The goal for every mission in this game is to destroy all the enemy Borgs without losing all of ours. On the screen, you can see both a green and red bar. This shows the G-Force energy that each side has. When a Borg is destroyed, the amount of energy that it costs for us to use that Borg will distract from that bar. Once the bar hits 0 for either side, you either win or you lose. I think that makes sense. At the bottom left of the screen, it will show us the amount of health our Borg has left. The bottom right, the B button, shows us how much ammo we have left in our gun or our projectile, and the X button shows us our meter before we can perform a special move or ability. This needs to charge, so it takes a bit before we can use it. There is a bit more when allies are involved. Just that when the gear at the top right of the screen fills up, this will allow us to perform a team attack with our allies. Their energy will be included in our green bar, as well as having a teammate to help us with the battle. The last thing to mention is that we can jump, but it is very slow. There is, however, a dash that will let you avoid attacks, and this is very helpful when playing the game. That covers the gameplay of this game, so let's move on to my experience with Gacha Force. We're able to win this fight even though it took a minute because I was trying to figure out the controls, but we got it in the end. Once we win, we get this little stat screen that tells us how many attacks we did, the percentage of our attacks that landed, how many attacks we dodged, how many enemies we defeated, total cost, ally Borgs defeated, among other things, and then this gives us a grand total for the mission. I don't think this does anything, but it's a nice thing to keep track of, I suppose. We get more dialogue between our character and G-Red. He tells us that the Death Force destroyed his planet called Megaborg, so he came here to stop them from destroying Earth. We can name our main character anything we want, and then we get a look at our map. The map is broken into sections, and anything with a yellow or red explanation point are missions in the game. The yellow being optional and the red being story missions. So we know what missions we need to do in order to advance the plot. I would recommend doing the side missions, at least at first. The game does sometimes make us complete them to get the story mission to spawn in anyways, which is kind of annoying if you wanted to just move through the story. Each one of these sections has a different arena that you'll fight in based on what it's called. This will include things such as the kids' bedrooms, at the park, at the school, and a bunch of other ones. I think this helps keep the fights fresh because there are a lot of missions in this game that mean nothing, but they help grow your team. In the next mission of the game, we run into our friend Kakeru and we have to battle with him. He only has one Borg and it's a fast but fragile one. So this ended up being extremely easy. The important thing is that right after the fight, he tells us that he's going to join the Gacha Force and follow us as a commander. So now we have an ally that we can take into battle with us. The allies in this game are pretty much useless, but sometimes they might hit the final attack on an enemy, or they'll at least take the aggro, so that we don't get teamed up on as much. The allies that can heal can be useful sometimes as well, but they're usually not helpful either. I don't know why they're so bad, because they look like they're doing stuff during the fight, but the enemy's health never decreases. It's just a weird choice. We can't pick their teams, but they will grow stronger and gain more members as we get further into the game. We run into a kid by the name of Kasune, and he just wants to fight us right now, but he'll eventually join the force. Then we meet up with two more members of the team that we need to help, Mana and Now. Mana is a healing type unit, and Now doesn't join until later, so I'll talk about him when we get there. The fight to help them out is still very simple, and I'll probably skip a bunch of fights because it's a ton of the same things over and over again. So I'll just focus on the fights that matter, like our next fight with Kasune and his friend Nakobe. These two decide that they're going to team up and fight us, just because they don't like us and all animes have to have that bully type character, even though the fate of the earth is in our hands. In the dialogue before the fight, Nakobe tells us that he doesn't like us, but nothing else, and then we have to fight them. This was the first fight in the game that gave us some challenge. They're a team, so we can bring an ally too. So this fight ends up being a 2-on-2. I brought Kakeru. Even though he's not strong, he can just move quickly and avoid attacks. Kasune has a very large tanky robot in this fight that hits hard and has a bunch of health, but is very slow, so it ends up being sort of a disadvantage for him. And Nakobe brought a dual sword-wielding vampire robot that hits pretty hard, but doesn't have great distance attack. So neither one of them can deal with the speed or distance. The fight still ended up being easy, but it wasn't just basic enemies like all the missions leading up to this one. We were never in any real danger, but I only hit 22% of my attacks during that fight. I'm going to need to step it up if I'm going to be successful in the future. After the fight, Nakobe tells us that he wasn't being serious and he was pulling his punches before taking off, and then we get a big GF energy upgrade to 800. This means that we can add more Borgs to our team heading into the future. This also unlocks the Edit Force button that lets us change around our team and build sets and save them for future fights. When editing our force, it shows us a grid-based box that has each Borg we have unlocked in it. Then we can grab and drop those Borgs into this dial that indicates our current fighting force. Each Borg has a cost to use, and we need to have the available energy for us to add them to the team. meaning the little bit we gain for completing side missions can help us when trying to make the strongest team later. For now, the only other Borgs we have are a basic ninja and a basic gunsman. They're weak and fragile, but could help us out if we lose G-Red, so we added them to the team for now. We get another fun feature about this game after a few more battles, where sometimes when we win a battle, we get a chance for a capsule, and sometimes we'll even get multiple for one fight. In these capsules, we can get items that will build new Borgs, or we'll get another Borg that we can use right away. It's all random, and this is the Gacha portion of this game. This was always exciting when playing because we could get really good additions to our team very quickly. This one was just a normal ninja, so just a basic Borg and nothing special, but we'll get some good ones in the future. Moving on with the story, we meet two more people that will join us, Tetsuga and Met. Then right after that, we meet Usagi and Tsutomu. Usagi will end up being one of the best allies that we can get because her Borgs are very strong. We run into Nakobe again, and this time we have to fight him alone. His team is much better this time, and he has a Borg with a giant chainsaw. Extremely early in this fight, we find out that this was a trap, and Kitsune is waiting to attack us, making this fight a 2-on-1 fight, and this one was a bit of a challenging one, because we were constantly being attacked by multiple Borgs. Good thing for us is that G-Red is very strong, and our samurai came in and was able to clean up this mess once he finally went down. I will say that the combat in this game doesn't change much, so a lot of these fights just feel like one massive blur when I'm thinking about this game. After the fight, we call them out for being cheap, but nothing much else happens. This far in, and we finally get our first boss fight of the game, in a mission called Destroy the Flame Dragon. This is a battle with a massive dragon that shoots fire. If it hits us, it will hit us for massive damage, but it's rather slow and we can move around freely to avoid its attacks. I really like the design of the flame dragon, with it being mostly orange with a blue color around it, and just the overall size of it. It makes this fight feel like a true battle, unlike most of the other missions in this game. I wasn't in trouble at all during this fight, but I did lose G-Red because I was being careless while taking on this fight. I also didn't use my team attack, which would have ended this fight much sooner. I can't remember, but I don't think I knew about them at this point in the game. Anyways, we get 100 energy for winning the fight, and we finally hear from the Galactic Emperor for the very first time. He just tells us that he will take over everything in the universe. We tell him that we're gonna stop him, and then he laughs, and then this little scene ends. At the end of every chapter, we get these like mid-episode still frames, like what would play during a cartoon sometimes back in the 90s. Some of them are pretty cool, but most of them just show our characters and aren't anything special. This also indicates the end of the chapter. At the beginning of the next chapter, we meet a mysterious kid by the name of Orochi. She's being controlled mentally by the Emperor or something and is just performing evil things for him. She tells us that she's the GF commander for the Death Force and that she always wanted to take down the Gacha Force commander. So we have to fight her. This fight is very difficult. Orochi isn't all that bad, and I was able to take down most of her Borgs with no issues. The problem comes when the Death Force soldiers with the shield and spear things spawn in. They block most distance shooting, and they have a very quick laser attack that they'll shoot out at us. Fighting them one-on-one isn't that bad, but since there's a couple of them, it makes the fight almost impossible for me to win with the Borgs that I have set in my party. I generally play this game with distance for the most part, and I designed my team that way for this fight. I wasn't able to do any damage even when I got close to them, so I basically didn't stand a chance. The plus side is that this mission doesn't require you to win. If you lose, Orochi tells us that she pulled her punches and she'll be tougher next time. I'm assuming she would have said the same thing if we won, but this was our first loss, and it made me think about how I was going to build my team going into the future. Even though I continued to focus on projectiles and guns, I just added a melee attacker in the mix for future fights. After this fight, the whole map is covered in Death Force, and we have to go around and take them all out, saving our team members in the process. It's not challenging, but it did take some time. Finally, after saving Kitsune, he joins the team. He focuses primarily on having giant slow robots that are very tanky. This can be helpful in later fights, but he doesn't put out much damage if he can't get close to them. He tells us Nakobe escaped on his own though. This isn't true, and we have to help Nikobe later on, and he joins our team as well. We have most of the people that can be on our team now. Every once in a while, we get missions where we have to take down a team of hero Borgs. These fights aren't usually a problem, but they show up a bunch of times during the game. So I feel like they're important, even though we don't get any dialogue or anything from them while playing. I just figured I'd show them because the Borgs are actually really neat, and they have some really cool attacks. After clearing the map, we find another new character by the name of Sho. He's a gray-haired child that tells us that all Borgs are his enemies, and then he leaves. He'll be more important later, but this is when the game introduces us to him. Then we get another fight with Orochi. We get our rematch that I wanted for so long. This fight was a joke because I was ready for it, and I was able to smack around her Borgs this time, even keeping G-Red alive and not using a single other Borg during the fight. Nikobe laughs at her after we win, and he is slowly becoming my favorite character in this game, at least personality-wise. After the fight, we get another 100 energy and we're able to attack the Death Force base, which is another boss fight in this game. This time we fight another dragon, but this one is yellow and purple, and I think it is electric based, but I'm not completely sure. There are a bunch of Borgs to take down during this fight, and honestly it took forever to take all of them down. It was never that hard or anything, but it just took a long time. Once we finish the fight, we get dialogue from G-Red. He tells us that he thought the Dark Knight was Orochi's teammate, but he was wrong. Then we find out that they stole data from him, but somehow in this mess, he's able to transform into a stronger version of himself, known as Neo G-Red. This is going to help a bunch going into the next section of the game. He physically doesn't look much different, but he tells us that this is his true form. Our goal now is to keep growing the Gacha Force because the Emperor isn't done with this planet, and he feels like the battle has just begun. This triggers the end of the chapter screen that shows Sho and Orochi. Once we begin the next chapter, we meet a very small child, Kotaro, that we need to help. He's on our side from the beginning, and he is a character that I never really used during my time in this game. After a lot of filler and growing stronger, we find another commander that is working with Orochi by the name of Tama. His Borgs are very different than most. They're giant airships that float above the map. They don't usually cause many issues, but they have a lot of health, and the Death Force will spawn as we're attempting to take them down. He's always eating, so let's check that off of our anime bingo card. In this first fight with Tama, we have to fight Orochi too, which is the only issue really, because Tama doesn't do anything to us while we're fighting her. Once we win, they leave and we move on to the next main mission, which is fighting Sho for the first time. He's accompanied by his own commander, a kid by the name of Yuji. Yuji has a big mouth, but other than that, he's very forgettable. At this point in the game, I just feel like there was way too many characters and a lot of them just don't stand out. If their Borgs aren't good, or their personalities aren't great, then I sort of just forgot about them. I don't know if this is a me problem or the game, but I only liked a handful of characters in this one. If you've played this, tell me what your favorite character in this game is in the comments below. Anyways, this fight was pretty easy, and it even gave me a chance to try out a few Borgs that I wanted to add to my team, just to see if they were any good. So that's always a plus. Sho is pretty strong though, and almost always takes out some of my Borgs when I fight him. Next up is interrupting the fight between Sho and Orochi. When we arrive, we find out that Sho has beaten Orochi and Tama, and was just about to leave. So we have to fight Yuji and Sho again. This time, this fight is even easier, and I basically just sat back and spammed my projectiles. Sho was able to take down one of my Borgs again, but then he lost 2 seconds after that happened, giving us another win against him. They leave and we get our first Death Crystal. G-Red doesn't even know what it is, besides that it's some sort of key data and we need to protect it. That turns into the next main mission of the game, protecting the Death Crystal that we just got. We have another fight with Orochi, which seems pointless since we're just fighting the same people over and over again. In this fight, she has one of the most annoying attacks that causes us to freeze in place, and the other Borgs can just hit us with no problem while this is happening. So I ended up losing this fight. It was really close, but that attack really caused me issues at the end of the fight. Orochi takes the Death Crystal back, and we get a new mission to steal it from Tama, since now he's holding it. This leads to the next mission where we have to fight him to get it back. It really is hot potato with these crystals. We fight the hero Borgs again in an uneventful fight to unlock more main story missions. The next main mission has us fighting Orochi again, but this time we're teamed up with Sho, so this time the fight went much better. Sho is a really good ally to have and is actually capable of doing damage to the other Borgs. Orochi does have some solid Borgs in this fight, and the Death Force Borgs ended up making us lose G-Red, which I wasn't happy about, but it ended up being fine. At one point we were fighting a dragon and a transformer at the same time, and I was convinced I was going to lose, but my vampire dual swordsman was doing work in this fight. I'm glad that I added this Borg to the team, because he's good at both ranged and close fighting. Orochi's last Borg is a flying Grim Reaper looking Borg that I never unlocked, but it looked really cool. Sho still won't join us full time and talks about how the Gacha Force and Death Force are enemies of his father, whatever that means. Then tells us that we need the Death Crystal to get to the Sky Fortress, and then he takes off. We don't get any answers, and we just get more questions with that exchange. After that fight with Orochi, we get another boss fight with a bunch of dragons. There are all types in this fight, but we start with the flame dragons, then ice, electric, and dark ones after that. You would think this fight would be much more challenging, but it's really not that bad. The worst part of fighting anything larger than us is the camera. The camera wants to battle us the whole time, making landing attacks much more difficult than they need to be. We were able to win the fight on our first try, and it wasn't even us that landed the last hit on the final dragon. After another more challenging fight with a bunch of cannons that can one-shot us when they charge their laser beams, we're given another item in a capsule. This finally gives us enough pieces to complete a Borg using our items. I'm this far into the game, and this is the first time this happened for me. I can't believe how bad my luck was with items. Anyways, it creates a brand new Borg for us called the Imperial Knight. Not one that I'd use in the future, but one that we can't just get normally. At least I don't think so. I'm including a quick look at all the Borgs I've collected up through this point of our playthrough. We have a bunch of doubles, and I try to put them into the warehouse so that they don't take up space in our toy chest. But I have a bunch of really neat ones, some healers, big tanky Borgs, minigun Borgs, and even some actual tanks and fighter jets. The variety of Borgs is very good in this game, and I think I would have played longer just to see more of them after beating this game. That is, if I wasn't attempting to beat every single GameCube game. Back to the story, we meet up with Sho again, and he tells us that this is the last battle between us. We're going to fight at the old base for the Death Force because that's fitting, so we have to fight Sho for the last time. This fight went as well as I would like any fight to go. We took out 2 of his 3 Borgs with just G-Red, and got the last one to about half health before we got taken out. Meaning we have a bunch of Borgs that just needed to do half of his last Borg's health, and we would win the fight. We ended up beating his last Borg with our Samurai, and that allowed us to beat Sho with no problem. This was neat because it truly was a one-on-one fight. No Death Force, no allies for either of us. It was nice. After the fight, Sho gives us another Death Crystal that he tells us belonged to his father, and then he leaves. Why doesn't he join us? Why? The next main mission is a strange one. We just get to fight some UFOs. They're really easy and we take them out without any issue, but it's very random. This fight just leads us into the next fight, which is supposed to be against the Cosmic Dragon, but Orochi shows up and tells us that this Death Gate will be our grave. So we have to fight her and the Cosmic Dragon in the same mission. The Cosmic Dragon is just a combination of all the dragons in the game, so it's able to use any element. The sad thing about it though is that it's not very good. I beelined for it in this fight and took it out, just to find out that another spawned. So then I focused a bit on Orochi, because she is the problem in this fight. The Cosmic Dragon can also lay these galaxy-looking orbs that will suck us up and destroy our Borgs. So we need to stay away from them if we can. Outside of those few things, this is a pretty standard fight. I did lose my first attempt and had to retry because I didn't know what those orbs did, and I lost a bunch of my team early in that first attempt. Orochi's team is mostly the same as it was in the last fight, so we just have to be careful for the time freezing one, but outside of that, we're in no real trouble. Once we beat Orochi's last Borg, the true Cosmic Dragon comes down. It's much larger than the other ones, and we just have to take it out. Funny enough, this was the fight I was trying out that Borg we got from collecting all the items to build it. This is when I realized it just wasn't for me, but it is a good melee tank if that was your team build. After the fight, we get 100 more energy, and then Orochi comes to. She was under mind control from the Emperor this whole time. The Emperor then talks to us and tells us that his forces will take us down. And the whole map gets covered by the Death Force, and we get the end character screen. This one shows us all the characters that we have unlocked during the story so far. I think if you played this story a couple times, you might get more characters, but I'm not sure. I didn't look into it. Let me know if there's changes if you play through the game multiple times down in the comments. I'd like to know. At this point in the story, the adults finally notice that the Earth is under attack by the Death Force, but they don't know what to do about it. G-Force tells us that they can't do anything because Gachaborgs can only take out Gachaborgs. That's good to know, I guess. Our team decides to split up and take out all the Death Force on the map. This means we can be allies with every single character in our party at this point in the game. We save the pit and Yuji joins us finally. Then we save the Stone River and Met joins us, which I thought he had already joined when playing, but I guess I was wrong. The next main mission, we run into Tama, and it looks like we're going to take him down for good. But then he asks us for help because Orochi is back and under mind control of the Emperor again. So we need to beat Orochi with Tama on our team. Remember, Tama has giant airships and is pretty useless in battle, so this wasn't the easiest fight I had with Orochi. Orochi's team is mainly the same during this fight, besides adding a giant robot at the end of her Borg, so that isn't that hard to deal with. There are other giant airships during this fight, and they're so tanky. They have so much health. So I was just shooting them between fighting Orochi, and once I got to my minigun Borg, I just unloaded on it. It still took forever though, which was annoying, but we were able to win the fight and make the GT area safe again, and Tama finally joins our team. I won't use him, but it's still pretty cool. We finish clearing out the rest of the map, and then we're told that a big signal is coming from the GT area. We now have to take down the Cyber Death Dragon. This marks the real invasion of the Death Force, according to G-Red. He tells us it's time to show off the real power of the Gacha Force, and he tells us that by using our energy that he will grow bigger to fight. This means that this fight takes place in the city. It's a new area, and it actually makes this fight feel different than the last 100 fights. I think this was a good choice. Realistically, this is the same gameplay as before, but since there are buildings all over and trees, it makes us feel big, like we're in some monster movie film or something. This ended up being a fun fight, even when the giant metal dragon came down shooting energy waves at us. This dragon feels big, and we can't do much damage to it, but it actually is a very simple fight. All we have to do is avoid the arm cannon and cyber wave breath, and that's it. You just avoid it and shoot until he's dead. After winning the fight, we get 100 energy, and then Orochi goes Super Saiyan and tells us that the time has come. She's being controlled fully by the Galactic Emperor now. We find out that the Emperor has enough energy from Orochi, he can use the power that destroyed G-Red's home planet, and then G-Red tells us that we can't lose the final battle, and we get the end of the chapter screen. We're getting close to the end of the game now. Before the final battle with the Galactic Emperor, we have the normal anime friends come together and use their power. This will allow for the Gachaborgs to grow big and fight the Emperor to protect the Earth from destruction. It was a pretty normal anime trope at this point in time. Let's take a look at the team I decided to bring into the final mission of the game. It's our normal team like in the last bunch of missions, but we lead with G-Red and then we switch between quick and weak and slow and strong after that. I think this will be enough to take down the final boss, so let's do it. Before the fight, we get a little cutscene that shows our Borgs growing. They're bigger than the Earth now, and we're going to fight on the surface of the planet. I'm not one to pick apart games, but these Borgs being this big and just running on the surface would cause massive damage and kill a bunch of people. I know we're not supposed to think of this, but it would happen. Also, how can we just walk on the water without sinking and drowning? I have some issues with this arena we're in. Anyways, the Galactic Emperor appears in a massive spaceship. It's huge and has a bunch of eyes on it that shoot lasers at us. In my first attempt at this fight, I had some growing pains. When we start the fight, we have to be abducted through the bottom of the ship to get to the top of the ship, for us to actually start fighting the Emperor. And once we're up there, the Galactic Emperor has a big shield around him and he's right in the middle. In order for us to take the shield down, we have to run around and destroy the 4 eyes that are shooting lasers at us. Once we take them out, the shield in the middle will drop for a short amount of time, and then we can do some damage. After a while, the shield will come back, and then all the eyes will reappear. This fight basically makes melee Borgs useless because getting close and personal with the eyes and the Galactic Emperor in the middle just isn't likely without taking a bunch of damage. As you can see, I didn't do well on my first attempt, and I actually lost here. This took me back to the drawing board, and I had to decide what Borgs I should bring into this fight with me. I did get pretty close on my first try though, but this is the team that I decided on for the second attempt. I went all range attackers because I figured it would be my best shot at taking him down. I need to keep G-Red alive as long as I can because he's my strongest Borg and does the most damage. He also has a large pool of health, so I can take more hits, which I will. One of the most annoying parts of this fight is that we can fall off the ship, and even sometimes when we lose a Borg, we'll spawn on the Earth, and we have to take the abductor beam back to the top. Usually this causes us to take a hit or two before we can get back up to the top from the eyes that are shooting lasers. At one point, one of my Borgs died just from the lasers alone before I could even get back to the top of the ship. This fight is also very long, and I would show the whole thing, but I don't think it's possible. I don't have that much to say about this fight. Go to the top, take out the eyes, hit the Emperor until the shield comes back, and repeat. Not the most creative boss fight in the world. It's funny to me that the Emperor is just a giant brain. I guess it makes sense since it takes over people during the game, but just a bit weird and doesn't seem to fit the rest of the game with all the robots. I haven't mentioned this yet, but the Emperor attacks during this fight, and he'll change his attack based on how low his health is. Starting with the lasers, and then moving to ice rocks that can freeze us if we get hit by them, and then he moves back into lasers, but this time they're just much faster. We kept G-Red alive for a very long time, and it helped getting through this because after him, we lost so many Borgs so quickly. It actually came down to our last one. I have no idea how it turned so bad, but we got it done. We attacked a total of 1,100 times during this fight. That's completely insane. After the fight, we get one more fully anime cutscene that shows Orochi turning back to normal, and her hair even turns from green to purple, which was interesting. I don't know why her being evil would affect that. And then she apologizes to us and we become friends. We go up to the mountainside with everyone that was part of our team, and the Borgs come and see us one more time before leaving and heading somewhere else. Then it ends. We get this screen at the end that I thought was pretty cool. It shows us our overall record, which I had 182 battles and won 90% of them, how many Borgs we got, and how many data crystals we unlocked, which are the items to build more Borgs, and how long it took us to beat the game. I was at 12.5 hours with this one, but we finished it. Then finally we get our last chapter finished screen and the credits roll. We finished Gacha Force, another game done for the challenge. So would I recommend this game? I think I would recommend this one. The battles can get old, especially when grinding out side missions to raise our energy and having a chance at new Borgs. But the main story missions are fun, and the bosses feel like bosses in this game. They're actually challenging. I love the amount of Borgs and how a lot of them play and feel different, so they got me on the gacha part of this game. Overall, I was happy with my experience with this, but let me know what you think about it in the comments below. If you want to know what game we're playing next, stick around. But if not, thanks for watching. Check out the last GameCube game that we completed in our challenge. That's on the screen now. If you made it this far, make sure to subscribe to the channel because it helps me out. Like and share this video so that we can get more eyes on this challenge. And as always, we'll see you in the next one. All right, so we got the GameCube game list up. We have our random number generator up. So on the count of 3, we're going to find out what we're playing next. So 3, 2, 1. 482, which is Winnie the Pooh, the Rumbly Tumbly Adventure.